I want to link us up to Super City. So 2011, whatever, 10 years ago. Such a breakout show, like such a, I don't know what to say. I just loved it. Like it was so good. It was so new. It was so fresh. But you and Tom, we spoke to Tom about his writing process, but I'm keen to hear about how it all worked. Like Taika's involved and you and Tom, like whose idea was it and how did the foundations of Super City start?
Well, I had been approached by, basically after doing like these plays where I played a lot of characters, and Katerina Denave, who was she was the programming person at TV3, was like, Mads, you need to put this on stage, put this on film. And I was like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. And then got a friend of mine who was a kind of documentary producer at the time, Garth O'Neill, who now, is a hotshot producer. And he was like, well, why don't we just do like a little teaser? And this is kind of like before or around like what Chris Lilly was doing. And then he came up with that, and I was like, oh shit, talk about like a collective consciousness in the world. And I had a few characters that I'd been playing. Georgie, the rough sleeper, was a character that I came up with in rehearsal for a play that I was doing. And I just came up with this character because we were rehearsing at Silo near Myers Park, and I decided that I would play this quirky girl who lived at Myers Park who was curious about the rehearsal going on, and I would just turn into this character to amuse my fellow actors. Like Kuta Forrester was in that play. And then everyone slowly encouraged me to be Georgie all the time, so I would get up and do improvs as this, like, basically it was like I just stumbled in from Myers Park and was like, what's happening in here? Like it was just like so that character came from that rehearsal process. And then I'd always kind of fucked around with like a Pasha style character who kind of taps into, if you're like a mixed race girl and you grew up in the 90s, there were so many girls like that who were just like trying to be white, basically, because there was nothing reflective of us, So I had these like, sorry, my watch is on. I'm just going to mute that. My daughter turned that off. So I had a bunch of characters that I'd been floating around in my head, and we did this like teaser trailer. And then I got Tom involved to kind of help me flesh out a story, and like neither of us had really written TV before, so we sort of got into it. We got funding to do the writing, and we just got into a room together, and basically we were like Googling like, how do you do a 3-act TV show? Where do you put the ad breaks in? Like we're sort of working out how to write a TV show at the same time. And Taika has been a friend of mine for years. Like he was doing, when I was touring number 2, him and Jermaine were like touring Humour Beasts. They're like sort of sketch shows. So we'd often be at, like arts festivals together, and we'd be like, oh, do you want to walk around Christchurch for a bit? Do you want to go and get a pie? It'd be like that sort of vibe. So we'd been friends for years. And then we got the funding to do the show. I was like, well, would you come and direct it? Because I'd love, I knew that our vibe would be good. And yeah, we just got to make this really crazy show, which I just feel like would not be made now. Like it was so dark and edgy and heartbreaking and funny in parts, but also just like sad. And I feel like I look back on that time like, how do we, I just feel like the landscape for TV changed a lot when reality television kind of came in and became a massive thing. I think people didn't want to really invest in experimental, interesting stuff, especially in New Zealand, because it's so hard to like make money for the TV channels. It's so hard for them to make any money from making TV. So, everyone kind of went, well, let's just pivot to making reality TV because it's cheap and people tune in.
How much got left on the cutting room floor of that writer's room with you and Tom? And I've got a follow-up question after that as well.
Tom and I are very naughty people, and we spend a lot of time talking a lot of bullshit. And some of our crazier ideas, for sure, would never have made network television. I mean, some of them are in there, and we could, like, when I look back at what we got away with, I can't believe we did.
This is my follow-up question, is whose gag was the anal eaters? With the
that's a Tom Sainsbury. That's got Tom Sainsbury written all over it.
With the gentleman,
sure.
With the arseless chaps that come into the workshop.
Yeah, that's definitely a Tom Sainsbury special.
I was rolling around again watching that back on replay, just cracking up. It's good.
Yeah, Ray with the anal eaters. Yeah, no, that was a Tom Sainsbury. Filthy. He's got a filthy brain. Filthy man.
We spoke to Tom in the lead up to this, and he talked about the credit to your craft. You said you spent hours with like the homeless community, the cheerleaders, bodybuilders, in order to, I guess, learn or like, mimic how they were doing. Is that an exceptionally important part of that process?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we did Super City, like, Ray in season 2 has a bodybuilding partner, and we actually got a woman who does bodybuilding, and, we wanted to be able to represent it respectfully. And so, we're like, we had a lot of like, in season 1 and 2, we had a lot of the real people be the real things. So my cheerleading team was a cheerleading team, and I just had to kind of like muck in and try and like, so there was this element of like where we were kind of, I guess, is that like kind of dogma kind of style of filmmaking where you're like blending reality with what I was doing, just to give it that sort of real depth and, kind of realism, which was kind of a strange thing to do in hindsight, but like that was kind of the vibe. We wanted to kind of like embed me into these communities and follow them around and try and tell a story about them and give a perspective about them and lend that authenticity to it. So, I think it was important in terms of the vibe of the show to kind of feel like we were just watching me be these people, but like it was as real as possible, I guess, and not like a big heightened comedy kind of thing. Like we wanted it to be a bit dramatic sometimes, and we wanted it to be edgy, and we wanted to kind of point out yucky things, and like we wanted to like, with a character like Georgie, who's on paper quite sad because she's a rough sleeper, but she was a clown. She was one of the more optimistic, beautiful characters in that first season, because we didn't want to feel sorry for her. We wanted to just spend time with her, and like we wanted to make sure that like people weren't like sad about her because she's living her best life even if she doesn't have anything, and that was the kind of message of that character, is like, she was trying to be the best she could with that baby she found, like, so we were trying a bunch of things. And
I can pick up on that. Was the review, was the reception, the same as that? Did people pick up on those underlying themes that maybe weren't so explicit?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is going back a bit now, but I think, the response to the show was, really great in that way. Like someone like Pasha, who's just like super deluded. At times you feel like annoyed by her, but also sometimes sorry for her because you like understand why she's, trying to be Paris Hilton, even though she's never going to be, or why she's like holding on to this dream of making it, but she's not talented enough. Like there's the kind of juxtaposition of those things does bring out sort of comedy and the drama. I think, people still talk about Super City and stuff, which is great. And, like we wanted to like someone like Ufa in season 2, who's like just a brutal person who works at like Warns, which is our version of Wins. It was that classic kind of thing of like, someone who has gotten to a position of power and then, like many politicians, like who I won't name, who, get, use the system to get into a position of power and then try to take the ladder away, and like having fun with the darkness and the comedy of that, where Ufa is just like on a complete power trip, but she probably grew up on the benefit, you know what I mean? Like, she's like going, no, I did this myself, and like kind of trying to find comedy in, social issues or political things. I think that was kind of Tom and I's MO, like how can we make this funny, but how can we also like, point out things that people might not like.
Tom gave us an example which might fit this criteria. He said she always wanted to push the envelope. We had one character that had an abortion. She was keen for them to hemorrhage on the dance floor and bleed through her white dress, but the network wasn't having it.
Yeah.
Is that the edgier side of it?
Yeah, totally. I was like, how visually amazing would that be for Pasha to be in a tight white dress, and then like, I mean, we were trying to push things, and obviously we weren't going to get away with that. I've seen that scene in something recently, and I'm like, we're trying to do that too. We were before our time, the world wasn't ready.
We spoke to Tom about Small Town Scandal and playing all the parts in a podcast kind of space, and the real estate that you need in your head to do that. You took it one step further earlier by, I haven't analysed it frame by frame, but are you in almost every shot of the 2 seasons of Super City?
Yeah, pretty much. It was something I didn't think about before we wrote it, and then I was like, oh, fuck. This is going to be so tiring. I remember there was one day we were shooting in season 2, and the network had decided they didn't like the storyline for one character, and we were starting shooting it the next day, and they were like, rewrite it. And so Tom and I and my producer Carthew were sat in a room after a day of shooting. Maybe we're like 2 weeks into shooting, and I was so tired because like also my makeup and my hair and stuff for Super City was like, so a character like Ray is like a full, like, so I have to get my hair all bound, then there's a skull cap that goes over the top, then there's a wig that goes over the top of that, then there's a beard, a moustache, then there's all this like crazy makeup, then there's like contact lenses for his eyes, you know, and I think we gave him a little like pot belly, like I'm in a little bit of a suit, like, and it's the middle of summer in Auckland and I'm shooting the show, but my makeup would be like maybe 3 or 4 hours sometimes, so I'm doing these massive long days, and we got to the end of the day, we had to rewrite a whole storyline because we had to have something to shoot the next day, and we were in a meeting kind of trying to write together, Tom, Carthew and I fell asleep and they just let me fall asleep, and I woke up 20 minutes later and I was like, sorry guys, what are we doing? And Tom was like, it's okay babe, we've got it. I think we're, so what do you think we should, what do you think about the dialogue for this bit? I was like, I think we should say, you know, so yeah, it was pretty much the most tiring thing I've done. I mean, recently the show that I acted and directed in was pretty tiring because those 2 things are require different things of your brain as well. That was probably as close to being as tired as I was during Super City. I mean, there's a reason there's only 2 seasons.
Yeah.
I don't think I could go back to doing that again. It's I learnt to power nap on that those shoots. Like I'd be like, how long have you got lighting? How long have you guys got to set up? 2 minutes? I got 2 minutes? Okay, cool. And I like learned to like fall asleep for 2 minutes.
Did your profile explode after that? You're already a big deal, but then you're in the biggest show and you're literally in every scene. Like, was the demand for you crazy after those seasons?
I would say I would say Sione's wedding was probably the biggest thing, and still is up there as like one of the biggest things that I've been involved with, like in terms of exposure. I think Super City was a bit more niche. It was on like a Friday night at 9:30. You know, I think one of the episodes got bumped for the Japanese earthquake. You know, and like then another one got bumped for the Super Rugby final. Like it was just, it was a really kind of niche show on a Friday night. That was like, you know, it was edgy, so they put it on late, and we swore. You know, I mean, originally Georgie's dog and Super City was called Sad Guy, but for a long time Georgie's dog was Cunt, because we just wanted to be able to Georgie to walk around Auckland being like, Cunt, where are you, cunt? But the network again wouldn't let us get away with that. Are you kidding me?
Amazon Prime don't have a problem with that.
Oh no, not at all. I mean, they had to write an essay. To Amazon Prime, the Deadlock people, to get them to give us cunt, but they backed down. But yeah, I think I don't know. I think Sione's wedding was probably the biggest thing that I got recognised for a long time.
Bit bigger than the Breaker Upperers?
The Breaker Uppers was then like, and yeah, I mean, for up until that point probably, right. And then the Breaker Uppers, and then, you know,